It doesn't necessarily mean that there couldn't probably be, at least this resolution here, not that it's ever happening, but there couldn't be some kind of city funds that might be used for some kind of maintenance.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I did want to emphasize that right now, just because we would be prohibiting city funds, that doesn't mean that the park board can't still use other funds and resources to maintain, replace, or fix their parks. In fact, most of the fields that have gone in so far has used Hennepin County sales tax revenue that they secured for youth sports through the Target stadium, for example. So that I am not trying to, I don't think we necessarily have the authority to prohibit what they could put their funds to. So we're leading by example with this a little bit, which I think is going to actually help people talk about it more and come to some kind of conclusions and resolutions about it. And the same with the school district. And I also want to mention, if we were to use the zoning code to create a ban and prohibit its use, that would not mean anybody has to take out what's in there right now.
Okay.
So none of the proposals are going to try to reach back in time and say you need to remove all of that with all those added costs to burden you. What it would be doing, and my intention is to look forward, saying in the future, and that's certainly how zoning code, I think they call it grandfathered in, but uses that were legal when they got put in, they maintain their legal right to operate. So with those clarifying comments, I see one other council member wants to speak. Councilmember Glidden.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thank you for taking up this issue and for the reminder that this had actually been part of a discussion since 2008, I think that you said, to look at waste tire mulch. I have had some very engaged residents in my ward who have been working on this, gathering information, being involved in kind of the city legislative process, as well as contacting the schools and the parks to kind of understand the next steps and to advocate for ensuring that anything that we, that the public is supporting in places that touch members of the public, whether they be children or adults, is safe, and that we're able to feel certain that those materials are safe. So I appreciate the work that went into crafting this resolution. I'm going to support the resolution. I am not going to support the motion by Councilmember Andrew Johnson on the funding piece. I actually feel it's a kind of a confusing staff direction. I haven't had a chance to look at it. I think I'll just abstain in it right now. I usually think of budget items like this to need to be part of the budget process. I'm not sure what it's going to mean to our finance staff to work with these other jurisdictions because they don't have access to the information you're asking them to gather. These are the public schools and the Park and Recreation Board. I don't know what their timelines are to gather information on what would be replacement cost issues, and I don't know that right now is the time to discuss that. I'm just saying that this is more the kind of thing that you talk about in Ways and Means. And then the final thing is that it actually is a big decision, I think, on whether we want to devote city resources to assisting other jurisdictions. And so that's, I'm not saying that can't happen. It does happen, but that's a major discussion item, especially when we have a lot of other pressures on things that we also value. So just wanted to put that out there and give some reasoning why I'm not able to support this direct staff direction at this particular moment in time.
How about if we vote on the resolution? It did have Councilmember Glidden's enthusiastic support, and then we'll move on to the staff direction so we can get into the details there. Did you have a comment on the resolution, Councilmember Fry, or is that okay? All right, then I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the resolution, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, please say no. And that motion carries then. And now I will call on Councilmember Johnson to present the staff direction.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This staff direction that I worked on with your office and with our finance staff would ask our staff to work with MPS and MPRB as they identify the costs of removing this waste tire mulch, to look at if there are any city sources of funds that could be available to help with this, and to work with, and I think this addresses Council Member Glidden's point of working or bringing forward a proposal consistent with city processes for consideration no later than July 1st. And this also should specify whether or not those organizations have taken any formal action to prohibit further purchase and use of waste tire products. Now, this motion does not specifically commit us to any number. It asks for staff to look at what funding sources might be available and to be able to bring forward some recommendations on that. It also works within the existing city processes, because obviously we do have changes that come up across the year that are outside of our typical budget process. So my reason for bringing this forward is because it's really easy for us to tell others what to do, but this is really committing city money to where our mouths are. And I think it's important for us to be able to step up in partnership and say, hey, if this is an important enough issue for us to speak out on, well, then don't we have a stake in trying to make it healthier for our kids in our city? And we do this, we provide city money for schools, for instance, through our clinics program. So it's not unprecedented for the city to step up and to put some resources behind our schools and making them healthier for our youth. So I think this is consistent with past precedent. I think it works with our existing city processes. I think it's a positive step forward in partnership. And to me, if we're going to speak up and say something, I also think we should be willing to stand up and do something as well about it. So I hope my colleagues can support this. Again, it would be staff working in partnership and bringing forward recommendations to the council for our review. And at that point, we could decide whether or not this is something we should approve. Finally, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we happen to have a lot of young residents here today. I wanted to actually call that out for the resolution. I think it's amazing to see some of our youngest constituents here advocating on behalf of this and sharing their personal stories as well. I think it's really meaningful as a council member to hear that and to know that you care and you're involved in the issues. So it's really important for us that you're here today. Thank you for being here, and thank you for speaking up on this issue.
Thank you, Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, Councilmember John. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. I agree with your sentiment that we shouldn't be passing something without putting our money where our mouth is. My concern is allocating money before the study comes back. And I mean, a recommendation that comes forward, I guess I would have no problem with the recommendation. So I'll probably I will end up supporting your staff direction. But the actual data doesn't come back until 2018.
Okay, thank you. I'll just note that what could easily come back as part of the recommendation is that there might be a call for the park board to look at putting this through the budget process for next year as part of the capital plan if they needed some money to do something with their fields that was different. That's a possibility. So I think that this could put something in process. I know sometimes the city supports bonding requests for other jurisdictions. So
Support, that's not our money.
correct. And the recommendation could be to support the bonding request. I don't know if everybody heard your side comment, but to support that, and it isn't putting money. I actually think that this direction doesn't say we're going to necessarily spend any city dollars on any of this, except we would spend some staff time on it. Maybe even some other part of the coordinator's office might want to get involved a little bit. I'm not sure. I know this is a direction to finance. That was the one thing that I looked at and thought, well, should we refer this staff direction to Ways and Means because it's about finance? But I think any committee can probably direct finance because they work for all the departments. It's one of those entities. So I'll be supporting this. I think it will have some significance to some of the school board and the park commissioners as well, thinking, okay, the city's willing to be helpful. I actually even had an idea that we might help somehow with the waste. If we could see, I think right now we allow actually homeowners to drop off old tires and we take that waste at our transfer station. They get a voucher for a certain amount. I think that's one of the expenses and one of the challenge for the school district. I'm not sure if that's something we could look at, if what it would do to our processes, but this is a group that maybe could get creative enough to look at some of those things. So we'll set that up for the future, and we'll get to review it when it comes back in July 1st. And is the assumption then it would come back to this committee, Councilmember Johnson?
Mr. Chair, because it is consistent with city processes, I would expect it would probably come back to Ways and Means, but at the chair's request, I'm sure that finance or the coordinator's office would be happy to present their recommendations before it goes to Ways and Means through the official city processes.
Well, I think it's good that it goes to Ways and Means. Maybe we can think about that at that time. Any other questions? Councilmember Frye, did you get to? Okay, Councilmember Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It feels a little premature to me to make such a formal direction of our staff. It seems that the park board and if the school board came forward with an estimate of cost, that would kind of be the first step of understanding what it would take to replace the materials. I guess seeing that this might not be a huge commitment of staff time. I mean, maybe not the biggest deal in the world, but I just, anyway, it's a little unusual, I would say, and maybe it could have been something that was a little more informal between our finance staff and just working with the school board and the park board, who seem to be, again, the entities that are going to really need to make that estimate to see what's the needs within their own facilities. So that's my perspective on this staff direction.
Okay, then, Councilmember Cano.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate this conversation. And I used to work at the district of the Minneapolis Public Schools on Broadway. And for my lunch, I would walk over to this little park that was not too far from the headquarters of the district that was completely covered in this material. And I always found it so uncomfortable and not a very good experience. And I kept asking myself, why am I eating my lunch here? And it was the only place where I could really go outside to enjoy my lunch. And yet I was in the middle of all these tires, right? Cut up tires. And I just would always think to myself, I would never let my children play on this. And I wonder how many other places have this kind of product in their parks. So because of that experience, I'm going to support Councilmember Andrew Johnson's motion. I think it's fine to have our city staff work on this. There's no monetary, clear monetary attachment to this particular staff direction. I think it does move the conversation forward, and it sends a strong message to our partners, our jurisdictional partners, that this is something we want to prioritize, that this is something we want to advance, that this is a real, tangible conversation we want to see make sure that that we're working on directly. So thank you, Councilmember Andrew Johnson, for this, and I'd be happy to support this today.
Thank you, Councilmember Cano. Seeing no further discussion, then all in favor of Councilmember Johnson's staff direction, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any?
Abstain.
One abstention? Okay, that motion carries. Thank you very much, and thank you everybody who participated in that agenda item. We're going to now say goodbye to it and say hello to our discussion on commercial building energy benchmarking. This is our fourth annual report, and Mr. Holcamp, I guess we're having the whole team come forward. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Gordon. Council members, my name is Luke Hollenkamp. I'm a Sustainability Program Coordinator in the City Coordinator Sustainability Office. I'm one of the co-leads of the commercial energy benchmarking work here at the city, as well as with Patrick Hanlon over here. And I'm pleased today to introduce Katie Schmidt and Nadia Khan to talk a little bit more about our 2015 energy benchmarking report, which they've both put a lot of work into. And we're really excited about the report, and I think you'll find the results to be very interesting and compelling.
Well, thank you. Welcome. Excited to hear how we're doing.
Chair Gordon, council members, and the audience, good afternoon. Today we will be presenting the calendar year 2015 energy benchmarking results. I'm Nadia Khan. I work as an admin analyst with the Minneapolis Health Department under Environmental Services Division. I manage the day-to-day operations of the energy benchmarking and the green business energy efficiency programs. The content of the presentation today is a little background of the energy and benchmarking program, results of 2015 calendar year, and new initiatives to improve the energy efficiency around the city. So background, building energy benchmarking is a mechanism to measure a building's energy performance over the time relative to other similar buildings with the goal of informing and motivating performance improvement. Energy benchmarking program works to meet the city's climate action plan, which targets to reduce greenhouse gas emission or carbon dioxide CO2 emission down by 15% by year 2015 and 30% by year 2025 from the 2006 baseline. Energy benchmarking is a nationally recognized program. Minneapolis is 7th in the nation and first in the Midwest to adopt such benchmarking-related ordinance. So what is benchmarking? We are all familiar with the Energy Star logo from recent appliances. Energy benchmarking is a similar process for an energy sticker guide for buildings. For eligible buildings, it also produces an Energy Star score. In downtown Minneapolis, commercial buildings make up almost 70% of the commercial square footage. So the purpose of energy benchmarking is to understand the large building market, identify the buildings that has potential for energy savings and monetary savings, show the building managers and the building owners the progress, the overall year-to-year progress, and then also to help building managers to manage the energy management of their buildings. To accomplish that, February 2013, Minneapolis City Council adopted Commercial Building Rating and Disclosure Ordinance, which requires private commercial buildings over 50,000, over or equal to 50,000 square feet, and public commercial building over or equal to 25,000 square feet to report their annual energy use, which is electricity, heating, and water data, to the city by June 1st every year. So here's an example of what a 50,000 square feet building looks like. It's the City of Lakes building, and the example of a public building, and the Lands and Barrel's example of a commercial building. The program was phased in starting from 2013. So 2016 is a very important year for us because the phase-in got completed. We also acted on enforcement actions for non-compliance and if there is a poor data quality. In 2016, we also published all the affected building data end of the fall to their respective property information page. I want to acknowledge the partners in this program. So Minneapolis Health Department operates, maintains the data collection process. We also enforce the compliance. We manage the cost share grants for energy improvement. Sustainability Office implements policy and do the annual reporting. Center for Energy and Environment provides extensive outreach and also technical assistance. RETAP, which is a Retired Engineer Technical Assistance Program, they also help us in providing the deeper technical assistance if any customer is in need. So here is a snapshot. Oh, the tool we use to gather the data is the EPA's Energy Star Portfolio Manager. And we also support our clients throughout the whole year by providing helpline and one-on-one consultations. So here's a snapshot of the whole process. We start the process in late winter by communicating, sending notifications to the building managers. We also provide a scorecard which shows the progress of their buildings or the position of the buildings, how good or bad they're doing. In spring, if any property manager chooses to submit data, we also provide a 2 weeks feedback on their data compliance. And as I said, we also provide technical assistance. June 1st is the deadline for the whole process. After June 1st, we act on enforcement. By the end of fall, we do a deeper analysis of the data and we publish the data using the property information page. This slide shows the compliance rate over the 3 years period, and you can see this is a successful program going very good. As I said again, 2016 was the first year we enforced citations for non-submissions and for poor quality of data. The table below shows the enforcement dates of the 2017 calendar year. So if the violation exists after June 1st, we will be issuing citations starting from August 8th, and it will be in every 30 days. And all the unpaid citations will be assessed to the property tax. So this concludes my presentation. Now Katie will go through the results.
Hi, my name is Katie Jones-Schmidt, and I am with the Center for Energy and Environment, and I'm housed part-time here in the Sustainability Office, and I'll be talking about some of the results from our 2015 benchmarking data. So like Nadia talked about at the beginning, we have 4 main goals that we're trying to achieve with energy benchmarking. The first one is to understand our large building market. The second one, identify buildings with potential for savings. Third, we want to show progress over time, and then we want to help buildings manage and reduce their energy consumption. So we'll talk about how we're addressing each one of those goals. So looking at trying to understand our large building market, we've had a 94% response rate this year. So fantastic response rate. That includes, a response includes submission as well as an approved exemption. And so that's what we have there. As far as property count, we had 417 buildings that complied with a submission, and that is broken down by private buildings and public buildings. We have a total of 264 private buildings that submitted data, and then 153 public buildings. As far as a little bit of context, so you can see that this map shows that the buildings that we have are all over the city, but there is a high concentration, especially of those private buildings in downtown, as one would expect. The majority of our large commercial buildings are in downtown, and that represents about 70% of the commercial building square footage in the city. So it's actually pretty impressive that we know a fair amount about the energy efficiency performance of 70% of our commercial square footage of the building in just 400 buildings. As far as the overall performance, we look at the Energy Star score. If you're unfamiliar with the Energy Star score, it's a ranking essentially from 1 to 100. As it's kind of a national statistical peer comparison is what you can think of it as, 1 being inefficient, 100 being very efficient. And the median score for our city is 71. Nationally, the median score is 50. So overall, our city is doing fairly well. Public buildings are a little bit below our overall median, where the private buildings are the higher end. So as a recap, 94% response rate, that should be 17 buildings, 70% of our commercial building space is being represented with this data, and a high Energy Star score median of 71. So what do we want to do with this data? We want to identify the potential savings. So we took a look at some of the goals from the Climate Action Plan, and in order to reach the commercial building goal of 20% reduction by 2025, we worked backwards and set a goal for 2020 because it's a little more within range. And so that CO2 reduction would be a 15% reduction by 2015. Ran some calculations and looked at how many dollars could a building save if they reduced 15% of their greenhouse gas emissions annually. So our median building, which is about 120,000 square feet, could save about $31,000 annually. And if we scaled that up to the whole building portfolio, that would be $27 million. So 15% reduction, $27 million, that's not chump change. In trying to identify where or what types of buildings we should be focusing on, we kind of analyzed by property type. So you'll see here, this is a kind of a complicated graph, but basically what you're trying to look at is the bottom, the low Energy Star scores are the property area that has the most potential or the greatest opportunity for energy savings. So you click it. So what we see in this is that there's a recurrence of certain property types that seem to have a lot of opportunities. That includes hospitals, hotels, worship facilities, and some individual offices. So from that is helping us target our outreach. As Nadia mentioned, we make this data publicly available and disclose it on the property info page. And so it's just this data is available both in the spreadsheet and then on property info. So this is an example of what the public can see. We've also created a map that is readily available for the public to see and better able to compare data for year over year. So a building owner, a building manager could click on a building, and you can see here in this snapshot that you can see both 2014 and 2015 weather normalized energy use intensity. So it's the energy use normalized for weather for those 2 years, so you can get a better sense of what is happening over time. We've really tried to get this information out to building owners in as many ways as possible. So the other we've revamped our energy scorecard that we've given out. So each year, with our first notification to the building saying that it's benchmarking season again, they received this scorecard February 1st of this year, which gives them some context of what happened in their previous submission. So with their high-level score, energy use intensity, and the amount of water they've used, as well as try to provide some context with how are they performing compared to their peers within the city. So you'll see within those graphics that we've tried to locate exactly, here's where your building is on this graph, and you're above your peers in this, at least in this sense, for this property. We're also trying to give some more context of trending over time. And just help them understand that, if they're increased over last year, they probably should look into why that might be. I wanted to give a little case study of how this information is being used. With Whittier Clinic, this was a building that was built in around 2008. They were very excited about it. It was a LEED new construction silver building. So everyone expected it was going to be a very efficient building. It was going to be wonderful. Then when Hennepin County started benchmarking because of the policy, they realized that they had a score of 17, a very low score. And they were just, they were surprised, like, why is this happening? And I think that's one of the benefits of benchmarking. So then it caused them to investigate a little bit further. They did a recommissioning study and realized that they have this ice melt system that's in their parking lot that's been running for 24/7, 365 all year. So that is what has been giving them such a high energy use and a low score. Just showing kind of the benefit that if you don't have this type of check-in, you might not be able to find these big problems. Moving on to the third major goal of showing progress, showing here how the public buildings have been faring for the last 4 years of submitting data. Overall, there's been a total reduction in public building use of 4%. But you can see here that it has kind of changed over time. The city has been doing a great job of achieving its 1.5% goal each year on average, which has been cited as a goal previously by the city council. But the schools and county are a little more all over the place. And so it gives us some context on which department, or not departments, but what organizations what has happened in their buildings. Looking at private buildings, because I'm sure this is the most interesting part. Private buildings, we have good data for 2014, 2015. And over those 2 years, we haven't seen a whole lot of change, but it definitely, at least hasn't been in the wrong direction. We've seen about a median change of about 3%. It's not really statistically significant, so we've just been saying there hasn't really been much change. And a total sum of the weather normalized energy use intensity of less than 1%. So generally not a whole lot of change, but if there is any change, it's going in the right direction. I wanted to give another case study, and this time on a private building, talking about Butler Square and how progress over time, showing progress over time is important. So this is a building over in the North Loop. It's over 100 years old. And it actually started benchmarking in 2008 because it saw the benefit of, its benchmarking is fairly simple, but it gives us a good snapshot of what's happening overall in the building. They saw that they had a score of 85, which was great. They got an Energy Star certification at the time, but they realized that we're not at 100. There's still room for growth. And I think that's the other benefit there, just showing that, there's always room for improvement, especially when you get a score. And so they constantly look for upgrades. They've done it in incremental steps. And they're still doing it. 10 years on, their next project is actually switching it to low flow toilets. And even though it's not actually the most cost effective thing, they know that what they want, the score is a motivating factor for them. And really a lot of their success is due to the people in the building. They have a strong advocate, Jane Maurer. She's the owner of the building, and she has gathered really motivated people within her team to see forth her vision of having one of the most green buildings in the city. The fourth goal that we had was to help buildings manage their energy. So we developed last year the Minneapolis Building Energy Challenge, and thanks to Councilmember Glidden for helping with that. And so we challenged buildings to reduce greenhouse gas emissions 15% by 2020. And lo and behold, we actually have a building that has already achieved that, Calhoun Square. So good job to them, and we're going to be continuing that through 2020. Another program that we've been running is the Green Business Cost Share. Last year was the pilot year of it, and this year we're rolling it out to all buildings and really trying to do outreach to the lowest performing buildings, especially those 50 to 100,000 square foot buildings that may not, be a Class A building that have all the resources in the world. So we're targeting them with cost share funds for energy efficiency improvements. Just another little aside, our program has had some recognition. So last June, the Environmental Initiative nominated, or we were one of the finalists for one of their awards. So that was fantastic. And we are the 13th metro nationally with the most Energy Star certified buildings, with 40 buildings in the city. So energy is important in the city, and I think this ordinance is also helping move that forward. Actually, with one of our programs, we've helped certify